It's early morning on July 5th, but in the city of Colorado Springs, Independence Day celebrations rage on.
Colorado Springs, 4th of July is a big deal. There are a lot of different fireworks displays.
But at a convenience store on Rio Grande Street,
219.
a different kind of explosion rips through the air.
What the hell was that?
As the clerk came out of the store, he saw a car.
Call 911.
And a woman getting out of it and screaming.
There was a woman running around and a guy kind of falling out into her arms. And he is bleeding everywhere.
Donnie! 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 No!
Across town, Lt.Joe Kenda and his colleagues at the CSPD are busy coping with the fallout of another raucous Independence Day.
Police officers know it's going to be a busy night. Fireworks complaints, traffic problems all over, all the parties going on in the homes. And it's a night that everybody wishes could be their night off.
Hey, Lieutenant.
How you doing?
You want to buy some fireworks? Sell them to you cheap.
Jeez, how many of these things you bringing in?
In police headquarters buildings, you wind up with rooms full of fireworks on the 4th of July. When I was in the building that night, I was amused that the pile kept getting so much bigger so quickly with every kind of firework you can imagine.
Don't light a match.
You got that right.
But illegal fireworks are the least of Kenda's worries.
911 got a call that there had been a shooting at a convenience store in the area of Hancock Avenue and East Rio Grande Street.
10-4, let them know I'm on the way. You guys don't have too much fun.
All right, now.
10 minutes later, Kenda arrives at the convenience store.
Hold on. So what do we got?
Got a victim with a gunshot wound to the head, was transported to the hospital, was pronounced dead on scene.
Got the name of the victim?
Don Garcia.
Don Garcia is 19 years old, and Mr. Garcia has no criminal history with us, and he is a assistant cook at the Broadmoor Hotel.
Do we know how he was shot?
Witness said they were at a party up the street when a big fight broke out and a gun was pulled.
When you have a party attended by a large number of young people and everybody's drinking, the smallest spark can ignite a volcano.
Did you witness anything else?
She said she was the passenger in the car. He was driving when he was shot in the head, which caused the crash.
With the examination of the victim's body already underway at the coroner's office, Kenda takes a closer look at the wrecked car.
There is no window in the door of the car, so I check the window crank. The window is intact, but it's a hot summer night. The windows are down. So the source of the bullet has got to be coming through the open window on the driver's side of the car.
Where's the witnesses in the car?
She's over here. Name is Naomi Garcia. Same last name as our victim, but there's no relation.
Naomi is being looked at by EMTs. She got a few cuts and bruises when the car hit the wall. She's very upset, what you normally find in all of these cases.
She was like shivering and her teeth were chattering, which happens with shock.
Naomi, I'm Lieutenant Kenda. I'm sorry about Don. I know it's a very difficult time, but I need your help. Can you tell me what happened?
We were at a house party. Everyone was invited.
Now, in the world of young people, the jungle drums announce the location of a party, and everybody and his brother shows up. The problem is, almost all of them are strangers to each other. That is immediately an enormous complication to me. It means that nobody knows who anybody is except for maybe a handful of people.
This is crazy.
Naomi tells Kenda that she and Don were having a good time at the party. At least until an altercation erupted.
She had been at the back of the house, and when they heard there's a fight, of course, they all ran out toward the front. She wasn't able to see very much, other than she knew people were fighting.
Was Don involved in this fight at all?
No, he wasn't.
Get back in there.
When you have a fight start in a large group, people seem to crowd around, they all want to watch. And, it obscures the view for a lot of people. It's also dark. And in this case, she couldn't provide a very good description.
But Naomi did hear one thing loud and clear. When the fight was over, the loser made it known he'd be gunning for revenge.
Nah, so you're gonna regret this, alright?
She said, I heard him yell, but I never really saw the guy.
According to Naomi, right after that, the party got broken up.
The cops are coming! Get out of here!
This is getting out of control.
Naomi says that this is now the moment the party decides to disperse quickly. They don't want trouble with the police.
Naomi, come on!
She remembers getting in the car with Don, and that other people were piling into other cars, including the car right in front of theirs.
That was crazy.
Yeah, I know.
Turn the lights on. The light, yeah.
And Don is trying to back up to get around all these cars. He's kind of blocked in a little bit. And he has to make a U-turn in the street to get out of the way of all these other cars.
But as Don and Naomi were about to make their getaway, shots rang out.
One thing I like about Naomi's story to me is that Naomi's story makes sense. You've heard me say this before. Tell me a story I'll believe. This is one I believe.
Thank you for your time. We may need to speak to you again.
After speaking with Naomi, Kenda makes his way 2 blocks north to the house where the party was thrown.
Did you find anything yet?
A little bit of blood right here on the ground.
We do find 2 small areas of blood on the sidewalk and street in front of the house. They're probably from the fight, a minor wound, so somebody received some level of injury in the fight.
How about shell casings or slugs?
Not yet. We'll keep looking.
In this case, there was no evidence of any shell casings at the scene, which could be indicative of either a revolver or, with people leaving and driving off, shell casings can get stuck in tire treads.
With scant physical evidence, Kenda turns to the neighbors to shed light on what happened.
I talked to the neighbor who lives next door, and his name is Emmett Simmons. And Emmett sees a lot of this party happen, sees the fight.
Here.
What's this?
The guy in the fight was wearing it. He ran across my yard and fell off his head.
Well, that's a connection. So now we have a piece of physical evidence that connects to this guy. Is it going to be useful to us? Maybe, maybe not.
Can you describe him?
No, sir. I didn't really get a good look at him.
Can you tell me anything about him at all?
No, sir. You should probably talk to Pete.
Who's Pete?
Pete's the one who keeps throwing the parties.
Thank you.
So I go over and meet Pete Mendez.
Mind if I talk to you for a minute?
Listen, man, if you're here to give me some sort of lecture about throwing parties, save it.
What a charming guy. I hated him 15 seconds into the meeting.
When somebody dies at that party, it becomes my business.
Look, I have nothing to say to you, buddy.
No, who are you? You're some angry, confrontive guy? He's behaving exactly wrong, in my opinion. And I look down at him and he's got fresh blood on him, on his undershirt.
What's that on your shirt?
Where?
Right there.
So now, all of a sudden, despite hating him, he really interests me. Exactly who are you, Petey boy? And what do you have to do with this? We're investigating a giant party that takes place on the 4th of July. It results in somebody getting shot when they're trying to flee this party after a fight happens.
We need to know who was involved in the fight. Shooting could be a natural progression from that physical confrontation.
We're dealing with a lot of vague information that suddenly becomes very focused on an individual named Pete Mendez, who has blood in his clothes, and he has a very bad attitude. Now we got a place to go.
Why don't you come with me?
Where?
Just come with me. This way.
When you encounter somebody like this, he's on his turf. He's standing on his front porch. I want him on my front porch.
Have a seat.
You kidding me?
You take him from where he's familiar, confrontive, and angry, and make him worry a little bit.
Looks like blood on your shirt, Pete. You want to tell me about it?
He realizes the bad guy act didn't cut any ice with me, and now he's sitting in the back of that car staring at his shirt.
It's a stain. I just put this shirt on a few minutes ago.
I'll tell you what. I think we need to take that and have it tested. Find out whose blood that is.
I've got to either keep him or let him go. To keep him, I have to find some way I can demonstrate that he was one of the two people in the fight. So with the witnesses we have remaining, we start questioning them individually.
As his men question eyewitnesses about Pete's involvement, Kenda continues to pepper him with questions.
Were you involved in a fight?
No. That was 2 other guys.
There's 2 other guys. You want to tell me about them?
Okay. Well, let's see. They were white. No, wait. They were black. Second thought, maybe they were...
Well, you forgot Asian. They could have been Asian, right? It's all part of his shtick. He wants all his friends to see him stand up to the man, all the crap that goes through these people's heads. Of course, it helps if you have an IQ under 80. These things seem important to you. So to him, that's all that matters.
Lieutenant, can I speak with you a minute?
So what is it?
Witnesses are saying that Pete Mendez wasn't involved in the fight. Apparently he was in the backyard when it broke out.
So maybe what he's guilty of is his attitude and nothing else. There's nothing we can connect him to. So I have no way or reason to hold on to him any further.
You're free to go.
Thanks for wasting my time.
Hey, Pete. Sure hope there isn't any underage drinking going on at your little get-togethers. I wouldn't want to waste your time in front of a judge.
So now I'm back to nothing. We're running out of avenues to pursue here. So my next step is, well, let's go look at the body. Maybe there's something there that can tell me something.
At the hospital morgue, Kenda gets his first look at victim Don Garcia.
He has no marks on him, except for a small gunshot wound 1 inch above the ear.
Unfortunately, we can't extract the bullet.
Why was that?
As you can see from the x-ray.
This round, when it went through the skull, fragmented into little tiny pieces. Massive internal damage to the brain from all this basically shrapnel inside his head. But the result is that there's no way to identify the pistol.
I believe he died instantly.
So I'm thinking what I was thinking earlier. That round comes through an open window and hits him in the head. He snaps his head forward and dies before he ever gets to that convenience store. And I'm still beginning to believe that he is not the intended victim of this crime.
Is there anything else I should know?
Unfortunately, that's it.
Despite all of our effort, our spinning our wheels in the dirt, we got nothing. The only thing we have for sure is Mr. Garcia in the morgue.
Who's this guy?
Mike Anderson. He's here to identify the body.
In most cases like this, we will usually try to get a family member or a close friend to come to identify the body, just to make sure we do have who the people think he is.
Mike?
Yeah.
I'm Lieutenant Kenda. Mind if I ask you a few questions?
Not at all.
Mike Anderson is married to Don Garcia's cousin. He knows Don well.
Were you at the party when he got shot?
No, I didn't go.
Do you know why he was at the party?
Yeah, a lot of friends and a lot of family. He loves the 4th of July.
There's absolutely no indication in any of the information Anderson provides that would indicate that Don Garcia has an enemy on this planet or that he has ever done anything to elicit someone's anger.
He was a pretty clean-cut kid. He was a hard worker, was very well-liked in the community. You know, he had a really supportive family. His mother adored him.
He was very special. He is very, very compassionate about people, and he would give the shirt off his back if he could.
Don was described as being a very social person, very friendly person, had some artistic capabilities and drawings.
He loved art. Art was probably the way he expressed himself the most, because once he would start drawing, he would literally fall into it. He poured his soul into it.
In addition to art, Don loved a good party. And according to Mike Anderson, Independence Day was one of Don's favorite days of the year.
He loved the 4th of July. He loved to see the fireworks in the air. The 4th of July was a fun time around here for us. We knew where to go and how to have fun.
He had a lot of cousins that were going to be at the party, a bunch of friends. So he had a holiday evening in a great setting with people that he loved.
There's no way that he could have provoked someone so much that they want to kill him. He's just not that kind of guy.
I believe you.
Knowing who Don Garcia is now is even more distressing to me. Mr. Garcia, an innocent person. His crime is going to a 4th of July party.
Do you know any of the people that were at the party?
Some are in the ER waiting room right now.
Thank you.
Now, as usual in murder cases, speed is important. So let's scoop up these people in this emergency room waiting area to see what somebody knows that can tell us that could be useful. It's pretty easy to identify the partygoers. They're the ones that are drunk. They're the ones that are 19, 20, and 21. And they're all together.
Scanning the group, one individual catches his eye.
I see this one guy standing there with a mouse in his eyes swollen and bruised, and he's got a fresh cut in his lip.
Mind if I talk to you for a minute?
Yeah.
What's your name?
Lenny Quintana?
I believe he's my other guy that's in the fight.
Mind telling me what happened to your face, Lenny?
All of a sudden, I have a guy who has been in a fight, who has been in an altercation at this party. Now I think we're getting somewhere. This guy could lead me in a direction I need to go. We're investigating the murder of Don Garcia at this giant party. The whole time we're trying to find out who's in this fight, we know that the fight has got to be a key element in this killing. And I just found the guy that's in the fight, and his name is Lenny Quintana. Maybe he's going to help us get to the bottom of who killed Don.
Do you mind telling me what happened to your face, Lenny?
Yeah, I got into it with a guy at a 4th of July party.
365 day and night, I labor. I'm a Jedi Knight, my words are lightsabers.
Lenny tells Kenda that the party was a good time, until some guys he'd never seen before crashed it.
Yo, 81st Street Crips in here.
He said he's announcing he belongs to the 81st Street Crips here in Colorado Springs. Now, there is no 81st Street in Colorado Springs. Most of these people aren't members of anything.
What the hell was that?
Just rapping, man. It's a party, having a good time.
Rapping? Oh, that's what you call that? Those ain't the words.
So you know this guy? Can you describe him?
Nah, I don't know. He's a white guy, 6 feet tall, young, maybe 22. He had a white LA cap on.
That just clicked.
Here. The guy in the fight was wearing it.
I happen to have an LA hat in evidence right now that Emmett Simmons gave me that said it came off the head of the shooter.
So you got into it about rap lyrics. What happened?
I have to go to my car, and I go, and as soon as I come back, boom.
Yeah. What's Lenny got?
Lenny's response was obviously to fight back in self-defense.
Let's roll. See, you gonna regret this.
Then after that, him and his boys start tearing down the street, and I already got jumped once. I figure it's a good idea, and I tell my buddy, hey, let's leave.
But Lenny tells Kenda that as he was leaving, someone began to shoot at his car.
Did you see who did the shooting? Is it the same guy you were fighting with?
I don't know. We were just trying to haul ass out of there.
Did you see Don when you were leaving?
No, but I know he was parked behind me.
There's the explanation. Lenny is the target. He's in the act of trying to get away, and so is Don. And one of the shots that our LA hat guy has fired has missed Lenny in his car and took Don in the head without any intent to so do.
While Lenny appears to be telling the truth, Kenda isn't taking any chances.
Lenny says he's one of 2 people involved in a fight that produces somebody with a gun. He says it's the other guy. Of course, if I was the guy with the gun, I would say it was the other guy, too. Is he a guy who's lying to me on purpose?
It's not that I don't believe you, but I need to make sure that you weren't involved in this.
Yeah, do whatever you need to do. I didn't shoot anybody.
We run a GSR test, and Lenny's clean. Test is negative, completely negative, not even a trace. Lenny's truthful.
One more thing before I let you go. You said you were getting into your car with a friend?
John Harden.
You know how I can contact him?
Yeah, it's right over there.
That's him?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. John Harden?
Yes, sir.
Can I talk to you for a minute about what happened?
Sure thing.
John Harden's version of what happened is nearly identical to Lenny Quintana's.
Everybody's cool at the party until these 4 show up.
He says the worst of them is this dude in the LA hat, and that he's the guy with the gun that was shooting at Lenny.
Are you sure it was the same guy that was in the fight?
Oh, yeah, I'm positive.
Can you describe him for me?
I can do better than that. I can give you his name.
What? How do you know his name? I did time with him in a county jail. We were in jail together, but he got probation and he got out. So he's not exactly from LA, is he? I said, no, he's not from LA. He's from here. That's why he was in a county jail.
So what's his name?
His first name is Troy.
So now I have something to run with. I've gone from white LA hat to white LA hat with a guy named Troy under it.
With John Harden's statement in tow, Kenda heads to the El Paso County Criminal Justice Center.
Hey, Bill.
Hey, Lieutenant, how are you, sir?
Good. Do you mind running the first name Troy through your database? He was incarcerated between those dates.
So we pull up the adult probation list based on when John was in the county jail, so we know approximately when probation was granted to our man Troy, our suspect in this case.
There you go, sir.
We pull up a list, and what do we find?
Crap.
32 guys named Troy. 32. It's like, God, is everybody named Troy that ever got arrested? So now we have to play the game, deciding which one of those 32 is Mr. L.A. Hep.
Do you mind helping me sort through these?
Sure.
It's going to be a long night.
That's what it takes, sir.
Nothing is ever easy, but we're going to get to this. And in the end, that L.A. hat's going to be pinned to the wall in my office. So here we are. We've gone from looking for Mr. X in the darkness to where now the sun's up. We've taken this group of hundreds of partygoers down to one, who I have a first name of, and his name is Troy. And now I have a list of first names. One of them is going to be our guy. We are on our way. Now the challenge becomes we have to find the right Troy. If you're probated, we have mugshots of you. There's photos of all 32 Troys. And we have 2 people that say they can identify them. So we certainly have a place to begin.
All right, Bill, let's see which one of these Troys is ours.
We start eliminating based on known associates.
So we're going to try Carson?
Confining the times as to when who is in jail with who, because our man, John, our witness, says he was in custody with this guy, Troy.
How about Duvall? Was he in custody?
So we're able to eliminate a number of those Troys who weren't in custody in the time frame John was. So that gets the number smaller.
This guy's 46, so that can't be it.
Then we start eliminating based on physical description, and that's an even smaller group.
All right, let's see what we got. All right.
We have an opinion of who our man is, but our opinion doesn't matter. We have to have positive ID. We want it from Lenny, we want it from John that he is the shooter. So we make up photo lineups containing these few guys, and we show them these lineups, one after another.
Which one do you want first? They're both outside.
I'm bringing Lenny. He claims he's in the fight with this guy.
All right. When you build a photo lineup, Colorado rules at the time were 6 photographs of people of similar or like appearances.
Photo lineups can be hit or miss. And it is remarkable how much people can look alike, even totally unrelated people.
No, I don't see him.
No one familiar?
Nope.
I got another set of them for you.
Yeah, that's him.
You sure that's him?
Yeah, that's the maniac that punched me in the face.
Thank you. We have him circle that, initial it, time and date. Thank him for his cooperation. We let him sit outside for a minute. We bring in John.
Take your time. Tell me if you recognize anyone here.
Right there, number 4, that's Troy.
Are you positive?
No doubt, I'd know him anywhere.
So now we take that picture out and we turn it over. And on the back is the name of our winner.
Troy Eugene Hartwick, age 20.
Who is he? He is a criminal. Among his other talents, he is a wannabe gang member. He's on the wannabe list. He's not a member of a gang, but he likes to tell everyone he is.
His suspect now positively ID'd. Kenda's next objective is to secure some FaceTime with Troy Hartwick.
We're going to this address because that's his last known address. We're going there, and who we find in this house is his mother and his brother.
Is Troy at home?
Why are you looking for Troy?
I have reason to believe he's involved in a shooting.
My Troy? I don't think so. You've got the wrong Troy. Why don't you try looking somewhere else?
They present attitude that they don't like the police, and how dare we say that Troy did anything wrong. He's always being falsely accused of things. Her boy wouldn't shoot anybody.
He doesn't live here anymore. I haven't seen him in days.
When's the last time you saw him?
Night of the 4th of July. He came over looking to borrow some money. I don't know where he's at.
Mind if I talk to you for a minute?
Yeah, I guess.
Want to step out here?
He doesn't know where he's at either.
You know, his brother's in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
So where's he at?
You might want to talk to one of Troy's friends, Fred.
Who's Fred?
Fred Burton. He was with Troy and those guys at the party.
All right. Thank you.
And it surprised me that they'd give us a name of somebody, because we haven't gotten anything out of these people, and all of a sudden we get a name that may lead us somewhere in terms of our search.
Kenda returns to his vehicle and contacts the station.
Lieutenant Kenda, dispatch.
Dispatch to Kenda.
I need you to run a name for me, Fred Burton, just like it sounds.
Moments later, Kenda receives a surprising response.
Go for Kenda.
You're gonna love this. Fred Burton, he's sitting in our jail.
He's in our hotel. How convenient.
He just got picked up today. He's in for car theft.
Perfect, I'll be right there. Kenda out.
He just got arrested. So he probably hasn't bonded yet. He probably hasn't even tried to bond out. He's gonna be there. Today's our lucky day.
After a round-the-clock hunt for 19-year-old Don Garcia's killer, Lt.Joe Kenda has finally pinned down his prime suspect.
We've identified our suspect as Troy Eugene Hartwick. We have no way to know at this moment where he is. But I've just learned that his friend, Fred, is currently in jail. Perfect. He may know exactly where he is.
Hey, Bill?
Seen it?
This is Fred Burton?
It is, sir. Open 6.
Fred Burton has a couple criminal charges that are fairly serious against him at this time. The DA is willing to work with him on those if he's truthful with us into what occurred and what led up to the shooting and who was possibly involved in that shooting.
I ain't telling you anything. I ain't no rat.
We appreciate the fact that you are a loyal, upstanding guy. But you know, in case you haven't looked around in the last 30 seconds, you're in jail. You still that loyal to everybody?
I'm gonna ask you to be a snitch. I'm asking you to help yourself. Look where you are.
What do you want to know?
Why don't you start by telling me how you celebrated the 4th of July?
Me, Troy, and a couple of guys were at the park, not doing a lot. And Troy came up with an idea in his head that he wanted to go to some party and put some work in for the hood.
Working for the hood.
I know what it means, but I wanted Fred to tell me what it means.
You know, work for the hood, something to impress the Crips.
Putting work in for the hood means that you are willing to demonstrate that you will commit acts of violence. It's all part of the mentality of gangs.
So Troy was in a gang?
No, but he would have did anything to get down.
Anybody like Troy that feels they need to become part of a gang, they're looking for somewhere to belong.
That kid is seeking what every kid seeks. Love, acceptance, discipline, a sense of purpose, all the things that people want that they're not getting at home.
According to Fred, at approximately 1 a.m. on July 5th, he, Troy, and 3 other friends decided to crash Pete Mendez's 4th of July party.
What you doing with that?
You'll see.
And Troy has his piece, but he leaves it in the car.
Let's get out of here.
That didn't stop Troy from stirring up trouble once inside.
Yo, 81st Street Crips in here. I'm a Jedi Knight, more words are lightsabers. Yo, I'm often imitated, never duplicated. Sit back, relax, and let your mind get stimulated. Round of applause, cause I'm the showstopper. Burger King.
Fred has been telling us how Troy has worked himself into a frenzy all day long about being a member of a gang, and he's gonna start some.
What? Yeah, drinking this bitch? Yeah, hell yeah. Let's get us something to drink, huh?
He doesn't need a reason. He's going to create one to start some trouble in this party.
According to Fred, Troy singled out Don Garcia's friend, Lenny Quintana, who was entertaining partygoers by singing along to a popular hip-hop album.
Yo, what the hell was that? Rapping, man.
We're at a party.
That's right. Oh, is that what you call that? Nah, that ain't rap.
Relax, all right, man? It's a 4th of July party. Everyone's having a good time.
Nah. Don't tell me what to do, all right? You better recognize here. Those ain't the right words.
All right.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
In an effort to defuse the situation, Lenny stepped outside to grab some air. But that didn't stop Troy from terrorizing other guests.
What you looking at? Huh?
It wouldn't have mattered if everybody in that party was a priest. Troy was going to find a reason to hate them and work himself up even further until he attacked one of them. And that's exactly what happened.
Fred Burton tells Kenda that Troy eventually tracked Lenny down outside and picked a fight.
Lenny, ladies and gentlemen. Check. Get in there, Troy.
Troy's problem is he's more of a legend in his own mind than he is in reality.
What's Lenny got?
When Lenny gets up, he proceeds to kick Troy's ass.
Nah. 81st Street, don't forget. You're gonna regret it.
As Troy fled the scene, word filtered through the party that someone had called the police.
Hey, the cops are coming!
People were going separate ways. Don was getting in his car, which was immediately behind Lenny's, and they were preparing to leave.
But apparently Troy wasn't ready to leave. He had a score to settle.
What you doing with that?
He's got a .22 caliber semi-automatic pistol.
Forget it, man. Let's go.
And Fred says that Troy is like out of his mind.
Troy!
Fred says Troy doesn't even respond to that because he's already made up his mind. The last time Fred sees him, he's running down the street blasting away at these people. We have absolute proof now from Fred, an eyewitness and participant in this event, that this case had absolutely nothing to do with Don Garcia. Lenny was the intended target.
God, what?
Troy's so stupid he can't even kill the right guy. He kills the wrong guy. But then again, he doesn't care who he kills, which is what makes him so dangerous. Don dies for the worst of reasons, for the twisted mind's eye view of an idiot who believes that killing is required so he can achieve the selfish emotions he wants so badly.
Yeah, man. That's what I'm talking about. Putting in for the street, man. I think I lost my hat.
Yeah, you did, Troy. Your neighbor found it, and he gave it to me.
You gotta get rid of that gun.
What happened to the gun? We ditched it in the woods or something. I don't know where it's at.
So I said, Fred, so here's the magic question. Where is he?
Your guess is as good as mine. You have any idea where he is? Florida. I don't know where in Florida, I just think Florida.
Skipping town is commonly done. It doesn't mean we're going to stop looking, and it doesn't mean we're not going to find you because we are.
Kenda inputs Troy's name into the FBI's national database, alerting law enforcement across the country that Troy Hartwick is a wanted man.
If he gets stopped for going through a stop sign, shoplifting, it doesn't make any difference. Police make contact with him for any reason at all. They run his name, and they'll come up wanted for first-degree murder.
2 months pass, and there's still no sign of Troy. Finally, police in Brookville, Florida hit pay dirt.
Sir, may I see your ID?
They have stopped Troy Eugene Hartwick for going 96 miles an hour and speeding because the rules don't matter to Troy. He's a criminal.
Your suspect has 1017 from El Paso County, Colorado, for first-degree murder.
Oops. Troy, it turns out we're going to stick guns in your face and arrest you for murder in Colorado.
Driver, let me see your hands. Open the door from the outside. Hands behind your back.
Troy Hartwick is placed under arrest and extradited back to Colorado. 7 months later at trial, he is convicted of first-degree murder for the shooting of Don Garcia. The judge sentences him to life in prison.
Poor old Donnie Garcia was truly in the wrong place at the wrong time. This was just the stupidest of all stupid crimes, because it's just about hubris. Hubris and the availability of a gun.
Here's a completely innocent victim being killed by somebody believing that doing this was going to get him into the gang.
My brother was so outgoing. He was literally growing into the man that he wanted to be. So that's what's so hard, is he never made 20 years old. And as long as I think about him and mention his name and talk about him like this, he will always be alive.
No one expects the celebration of Independence Day to turn badly. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be the birth of our nation. It's supposed to be all those things. But what is it now? A bad memory for lots and lots of people. And a loss of a valuable life in exchange for what? Nothing. Nothing at all.
Tokyo, 1995. One of those nights when the city's lights feel too bright. Like they're trying to bleach something out of the air, and the rain doesn't fall so much as it hisses against the asphalt, turning every crosswalk into a mirror. Every alley into a throat you don't want to look down, and somewhere inside that glow a woman disappears so cleanly it feels rehearsed. As if the city itself exhaled and she was gone. No scream. No struggle witnessed. No body. Just a gap where a life should be, and a single detail that still makes detectives sit up straighter even decades later. Her umbrella was found standing upright, perfectly balanced beside a vending machine, handle facing the street. As if she'd stepped away for 10 seconds and would come back for it any moment. Only she never did. Her name was Oki Sakamoto. 24. A junior editor at a small publishing office near Kenda, the kind of job where you're invisible until a deadline collapses, and then suddenly you're the last line holding the pages together. She lived in a narrow apartment in Nakano with a view of a concrete wall and a sliver of sky, and she had the routine of someone who believed routines were protection. Same convenience store for coffee. Same platform entrance. Same habit of counting the coins in her pocket without thinking, thumb brushing the ridges like a rosary. Her friends described her in quick phrases: quiet, sharp, dependable, words you use for someone who doesn't invite trouble. Her mother said she still called every Sunday. Her co-workers said she stayed late. Her neighbor remembered the sound of her keys. That's what the case begins as: ordinary. Too ordinary. The kind of ordinary that makes you drop your guard. On Wednesday, October 18th, Oki left work around 9:17 p.m. The building's security guard marked the time, because she said "Otsukaresama," with a tired smile, and because she wasn't alone. She was walking beside a man the guard didn't recognize. Not tall. Not short. Mid-30s maybe. Dark coat. A face that slid off memory like water. The guard later told police the man kept his hands visible, kept a polite distance, like someone trained to look harmless. They paused under the awning while rain hammered the street, and Oki opened a clear vinyl umbrella, the common kind you could buy anywhere for a few $100. She didn't look frightened. She didn't look excited. She looked focused, like she'd decided something. At 9:29 p.m., her subway card tapped at the Kanda station gate. The record is clean, electronic, indisputable. She entered the Marinauchi line platform. There's CCTV, but 1995 CCTV is grain and ghosts. You see shapes. You see motion. You see her umbrella. You see her hair tucked behind one ear. You see a man behind her in a dark coat, maybe the same man, maybe someone else, maybe your mind trying to stitch a face onto a shadow. She boards the train. The doors close. And that's where the story should keep moving. Nakono, apartment door, wet shoes on a mat, but instead it fractures. Because Oki never tapped out of any station gate. No exit record. No new transaction. No normal explanation. People don't disappear inside the Tokyo subway system like a dropped coin. Not without leaving something, an exit beep, a station camera, a witness, a body. The system is arteries and eyes and commuters stacked shoulder to shoulder. Yet her last confirmed trace is the entrance at Kenda. After that, silence. Her mother called her the next morning. No answer. Called again at lunch. No answer. By evening, anxiety turned into something heavier, the kind that sits in your stomach and refuses to move. Her mother took the train into Tokyo, went to the publishing office, spoke to Oki's supervisor, who frowned and said Oki hadn't come in, which was unheard of, which was wrong. The supervisor called the police with the firm, embarrassed tone of someone who doesn't want to overreact, but can't explain the empty chair. A missing person report was filed. A photo was copied. A description was read aloud by officers, who had read 100 descriptions that year, and would read 100 more. And then, that umbrella. A patrol officer found it the second night, 10:43 p.m., near a vending machine outside the west exit of Shinjuku Station. Shinjuku, the beating heart. The crossing currents. Neon, noise, men in suits, women in heels, teenagers laughing, touts whispering, taxis crawling, the smell of cigarette smoke and wet concrete. Shinjuku is a place where you can be anonymous even while standing under a billboard the size of a building. The umbrella was dry on top, wet at the edges, like it had been set down after the rain eased. It stood too neatly, too intentionally. No wind had knocked it over. Nobody had taken it. Nobody had even moved it out of the way, which is its own kind of strange in Shinjuku. The officer picked it up, found no name tag, no distinctive marks. Just a cheap clear umbrella. Ubiquitous. Disposable. Except the handle had a faint smear on it. A greasy half-print that looked like a thumb dragged across plastic. Forensics took it. Lifted what they could. In 1995, DNA wasn't what it would become. Fingerprints mattered more. The print was partial. A fragment. Not enough for a match. But enough to say someone had held it recently besides Oki, and held it in a way that suggested nervousness, pressure uneven, a microslip, as if the hand was damp. The subway contradiction and the Shinjuku umbrella shouldn't coexist. If her last trace is Kanda, why would her umbrella appear at Shinjuku the next night? Did someone bring it there? Did she? Was the entrance record a mistake? The transit authority insisted it wasn't. The machine logs were solid. So detectives did what detectives do when reality won't cooperate. They built multiple realities and tried to see which one survived. Theory 1, she never boarded at Kanda. Someone used her card. But her card was never recovered, and the CCTV shows a woman matching her entering the gate. Theory 2, she boarded, got off somewhere, and somehow left no exit record, tailgated someone, jumped a gate, used a maintenance door. Possible, but unlikely for someone meticulous and cautious. Theory 3, she was intercepted inside the station, pulled into a staff corridor, a restroom, a locked room. But stations are busy, staff are present, and a struggle would draw eyes. Theory 4, the simplest and the ugliest, someone coaxed her out. Someone she trusted enough to follow without fear, into a place where the city's noise swallowed everything. The man seen with her at 9:17 became the first hinge point. Police returned to the security guard, pressed him gently, then harder. The guard described the coat again. The hair. The posture. Nothing. No scars. No tattoos. No accent. The man had said nothing within earshot. The guard kept repeating a phrase that sounded like an apology. He looked like anybody. They circulated sketches, but sketches of anybody don't catch somebody. They interviewed Oki's co-workers. They learned she had been editing a true crime paperback translation, a lurid foreign case that had sparked internal debate. Too sensational, too grim. They learned she'd received a phone call at work that day and stepped into the stairwell to take it, voice low. They learned she'd been seen at a payphone near the office at 6:40 p.m., feeding coins with quick fingers, glancing at her watch. Payphones. Pagers. 1995. Her desk drawer held a pocket notebook. Inside, among deadlines and kanji scribbles, there was one line that didn't fit. October 18, 9 p.m., L. Just the letter. No surname. No explanation. L could be anything. A location. A person. A code. Detectives asked, was there a lover? Oki's friends hesitated, then said she'd been meeting someone lately, nothing official, nothing introduced, a man she spoke about vaguely, carefully. They called him the older guy, as if age itself was his identity. She had once said, joking but not joking, that he knew too much about trains. Her friends laughed at the time. Now it landed like a weight. Police checked her apartment. No sign of forced entry. Shoes lined up. Sink clean. A cup rinsed and placed upside down to dry, as if she'd planned to return and use it again. Her futon folded. Her pajamas still in a plastic package from the laundromat. There was a smell of detergent and stale air. Nothing missing except the things that would be missing if she'd simply gone out, her wallet, her card, her keys. Her bicycle still chained downstairs. Her toothbrush dry. Then they found the cassette tape. It was wedged behind books on her shelf, mislabeled in black marker, draft. Her co-workers knew she sometimes recorded notes for herself, lines to remember, edits to make while riding the train. The tape was the kind that clicked and hissed, the sound of a machine breathing. For the first 30 seconds, it was blank, then the faint rustle of fabric, then her voice, quiet, strained, like she didn't want anyone to hear her even though she was recording. She said her own name once, as if testing the MIC. She mentioned a meeting and Shinjuku and then stopped. There was a pause long enough to make your skin tighten. Then she said, if this is wrong, I need to know now. Another pause. A faint sound like a train passing, distant but unmistakable. And then the tape ended abruptly, not with a click, but with a hard cut, like someone yanked the cassette out mid-sentence. The tape should have been a breakthrough. Instead it was gasoline on uncertainty. Because if she recorded it, she did it before she vanished, and if she mentioned Shinjuku, the umbrella suddenly felt less like planted evidence and more like an echo of her last intention. Detectives canvassed Shinjuku again. They traced the vending machine area where the umbrella was found. They interviewed the station attendants who worked the west exit. They asked shop owners, late-night ramen staff, taxi drivers. A few remembered a young woman with a clear umbrella the night before, maybe. A young woman in Tokyo is not a rare sight. One taxi driver said a woman matching her description had approached his cab, then stepped back as if reconsidering, then walked away with a man. He described the man as wearing a dark coat. Dark coat. Again. Always the dark coat. They pulled phone records from the publishing office. There was a call that afternoon from a public phone near Ikeburo. Short. 2 minutes. Too short for comfort. They pulled Oki's home line records. 2 silent calls the night she disappeared, no voice, just the line open for a breath and then click. They checked hospitals, shelters, morgues. Nothing. The newspapers caught the scent. Tokyo loves a mystery until it becomes too real, and then it devours it. Headlines hit the kiosks. Young woman vanishes after late shift. Subway trail goes dark. Cold case begins overnight. Talk shows speculated with the casual cruelty of daylight television. A cult. A stalker. A lover's quarrel. The public oscillated between fascination and fear. Mothers held their daughters' wrists in the crowd. Women bought whistles. Men checked over their shoulders on platforms, as if danger could be seen if you stared hard enough. Detectives followed the money. Oki's bank account had no withdrawals after October 18. Her credit card wasn't used. No purchases at convenience stores, no train tickets, no hotel payments. Either she was dead, an awful word in police reports, softened into, presumed, or someone had taken her somewhere without allowing her to touch her own life. A controlled disappearance. A contained one. A month in, a witness came forward, an employee at a coin locker facility near Shinjuku, who said she remembered a woman on October 18, around 10 p.m., struggling with a locker key, hands shaking. The employee said the woman kept looking behind her. The employee asked if she needed help. The woman said no, too quickly. A man in a dark coat stood several steps away, pretending to examine a map. The employee couldn't be sure it was Oki, but the hair, the build, the umbrella. Police photographed every locker in that row, checked each one's rental history. Most were empty. Some held forgotten gym bags. One was rented that night and emptied the next morning. A short rental. Paid in coins. No name. No receipt. Inside, they found one thing the cleaners had missed, stuck in the back corner like a deliberate insult. A tiny paper crane, folded from a page torn out of a paperback. The print on the paper was English. The words were about death. The crane was taken into evidence. The page fragment was matched to the crime paperback Oki had been editing at work. The fold lines were sharp. Recent. Someone had made it quickly, maybe nervously, maybe with practice. Origami as message. Origami as signature. Or origami as coincidence that only looks like meaning when you're desperate enough to find it. The case tightened, then twisted. If she was at Shinjuku, how did she get there? If she got there willingly, why the fear? If she was forced, why so quiet? The detectives assigned to her disappearance worked long hours, chasing the dark coat through Tokyo's bloodstream. They checked employment records, ex-boyfriends, classmates, acquaintances, commuters, men who loitered at stations. They visited hostess bars and questioned people who smiled through lies. They leaned on the publishing office, on the staff, on anyone who might know who L was. They found a translator, who used the nickname L in email headers, a foreigner passing through, but he had left Japan a week earlier. They found a woman who signed her notes with L for Lucky, but she was a fan, not a threat. The letter stayed stubbornly blank. Weeks became months. Posters faded. The photo of Oki, eyes calm, mouth neutral, started to look like a relic from someone else's life. Her mother kept calling, kept visiting police, kept repeating the same sentence that cuts deeper every time. She would never do this. In the winter, someone mailed a postcard to the publishing office with no return address. On the front was a blurry photograph of Shinjuku's west exit at night, neon bleeding into rain. On the back were 3 words, stamped in block letters, English again, she saw me. No fingerprints. No saliva. Nothing but ink and threat. The detectives pinned the postcard on a board and stared at it like it might speak if watched long enough. She saw me. Not, I saw her. Not, I took her. The grammar mattered. It suggested the writer was not proud, not confessing, but reacting, angry that she noticed, angry that she recognized something, angry that her awareness turned her into a problem to be erased. And suddenly the case stopped being about a random disappearance and started feeling like collateral damage in a secret Oki had brushed against without understanding, a secret that moved through Tokyo in a dark coat. Hands visible, face forgettable, polite enough to walk a woman into the rain and vanish her without leaving an exit beep. By spring, the file had grown thick. The evidence had grown thin. The umbrella sat in a locker of its own, labeled and bagged, like an artifact from a city that refused to remember. The cassette tape was copied, analyzed, listened to through headphones until every breath sounded suspicious. The paper crane rested in plastic, the English words trapped inside the folds like a dead insect. And on nights when the rain came down hard over Shinjuku, commuters would sometimes glance at vending machines and swear they saw a clear umbrella standing alone, perfectly upright, waiting for someone who would never return, and the city would keep moving around it, trains arriving, doors closing, the gate beeping for everybody except the one woman whose last recorded step had led her into a hole in the middle of Tokyo. The first winter after Oki Sakamoto vanished, Tokyo felt louder in the wrong places and too quiet where it mattered, as if the city had agreed to keep breathing, but had stopped telling the truth, and inside a cramped detective squad room the case file expanded like a living thing, pages multiplying, photos curling at the corners, cigarette smoke sinking into paper, and every new lead arriving with the same promise and the same sting. Maybe this is it, maybe this is the thread, until it snapped, leaving the investigators with raw fingertips and nothing to show for it but another empty coffee can on the desk. They called it a missing person, but the way they spoke when the door was closed gave it a darker shape, a word they didn't like to write down because it turned hope into evidence. Abduction, and not the sloppy kind, not the kind that leaves bruises and broken nails, but the kind that works like a surgical cut, quick, quiet, deliberate. They started with the postcard, because it was the only thing that felt like a voice from the other side of the void, and voices, even anonymous ones, carry habits. The paper stock was cheap, the kind sold in station kiosks, glossy front, rough back. The photograph on the front wasn't a tourist shot, not centered, not pretty, it was taken from chest height, angled slightly down, as if the photographer didn't want to be seen holding the camera up. The neon bled into the rain exactly the way it does when you're in a hurry. Forensics examined the ink in the stamp, the pressure marks, the spacing between letters. The phrase, "she saw ME," was too clean, too even, as if the stamp was a set, not random cutouts, which narrowed it to office supplies, hobby kits, small stores. The postmark said it entered the system through a mailbox in Ikeburo. Ikeburo again. The same neighborhood as that 2-minute payphone call. Patterns begin as coincidences until they don't. Detectives canvassed the blocks around the mailbox, dozens of them, in raincoats and plain clothes, checking stationery shops, checking hobby stores, checking anyone who sold rubber stamps. They found plenty. Tokyo is a city of meticulous hobbies. Scrapbooking, calligraphy, stamp collecting. And in one small shop, tucked behind an arcade, a clerk remembered selling a stamp kit to a man in a dark coat about a week earlier. The clerk's description was maddeningly familiar, mid-30s, polite, forgettable, but she added one detail that hooked into the squad's nerves like a fishbone. The man's left hand trembled slightly when he counted coins, not from age, not from cold, but from something neurological, a tremor that came and went like a weak pulse. The clerk said he apologized for dropping a coin, smiled as if embarrassed, and asked if she had stamps with English letters. When she said yes, he chose block capitals, no flourishes, no style. A tremor. A physical tell. Something that could survive memory. They asked her if he smelled of smoke. If he had glasses. If his nails were bitten. She shook her head. She had been busy. She hadn't thought it mattered. They showed her sketches of suspects from other cases, men with similar builds. Nothing. They asked if he came back. No. In Tokyo, the tide of faces never returns the same way twice. So they widened. They pulled reports from other precincts, letters, postcards, anonymous threats. Anything with English. Anything with block stamping. Anything mailed from Ikeburo. Dozens appeared, most unrelated, angry lovers, pranksters, death threats. But one stood out. A missing woman case from late 1994. A college student named Rina Nishikawa, last seen near Ikeburo station, no exit record on her transit card, no body. Her case had gone cold quietly because the family was poor, because the press didn't linger, because the city had too many disappearances to hold them all. The similarities were enough to make the detectives stare at the wall. 2 young women. 2 station vanishings. 2 holes where an exit beep should be. The squad chief, a man who'd been a detective long enough to distrust coincidence, ordered the files pulled side by side. The edges matched like torn paper. And then, as if Tokyo itself resented the attention, a third case surfaced, February 1995, a hostess from Kabukicho who disappeared after her shift. Her friends said she left with a customer in a dark coat. Her umbrella, clear vinyl, was later found standing upright beside a payphone near Shinokubo. Another umbrella. Another deliberate placement. Another mocking still life. 3 cases don't make a pattern on paper. In the streets, they make fear. The squad formed an unofficial task group, pulling detectives with experience in missing persons, vice, transit security. They spoke with the Tokyo Metro staff, requested maintenance logs, reviewed staff rosters for Kenda and Shinjuku and Ikeburo. They looked for anyone with access to non-public corridors, anyone who could guide someone into a staff door without raising suspicion. They looked for a man who could move through stations like he belonged there. The idea became a whisper: what if the abductor wasn't a stranger to the subway? What if he was part of it? They brought in station maps, the kind commuters never see, service tunnels, emergency exits, locked rooms, ventilation shafts. The city beneath the city. They circled areas where a person could disappear from public view in seconds. They marked spots with poor camera coverage, blind corners, stairwells where the lighting flickered. They built a timeline like scaffolding: 9:17 at the office, 9:29 at Kanda Gate. The train's departure. The possible transfer points. They listed every station between Kanda and Nikonosakawa, every opportunity. They measured walking times. They accounted for crowd density at that hour. They did what cops do when they can't find the truth: they tried to calculate it. Then, on a damp afternoon in early December, a commuter came forward with a story that made the room go quiet in a way that felt like something entering. He was a salaryman, mid-40s, the kind who avoided police unless forced, but his conscience had begun to gnaw. He said that on October 18th, around 9:40 p.m., he was on the Marunouchi line, standing near the door, watching reflections in the window, because there was nothing else to do. At Okanamizu, a young woman with a clear umbrella got on. She held the umbrella even though she was inside, as if it was a shield. Behind her was a man in a dark coat. He stayed half a step behind, close enough to control, far enough to look like a companion. The salaryman said the woman's eyes flicked left and right, quick, anxious. The man leaned in and spoke softly. Not angry. Not loud. He smiled when he spoke, which unsettled the witness more than shouting would have. The woman nodded once, like surrender. At Karakuan, they got off together. The woman moved stiffly, like her joints didn't want to cooperate. The man's left hand trembled slightly as he held the strap of a bag. Karakuan. That station had a service corridor connecting to maintenance facilities. It also had access routes to Tokyo Dome City, an amusement complex with back entrances, employee doors, storage rooms. A place where people moved in costumes and uniforms and nobody looked twice at a stranger walking with someone. The witness couldn't swear it was Oki. But he was sure about the umbrella. Sure about the man's smile. Sure about the tremor. That was enough to make Karakuan the new center of gravity. Detectives pulled Karakuan station CCTV. The footage was worse than Kenda's, angles limited, the platform crowded. But they found a moment, grainy, choppy, where a woman with a clear umbrella stands near the edge, and beside her a man in a dark coat. The man turns his head slightly toward the camera, and for one fraction of a second his face is visible, just enough to know it would haunt you, just enough to know it wouldn't. Average features. Thin lips. Slightly sunken eyes. A face built for anonymity. The kind you'd forget if you didn't have a reason to remember. The tremor wasn't visible, but the posture was controlled, contained. Not rushed. Not panicked. Patient. They printed stills. They circulated them quietly to station staff and maintenance crews. They asked, "Do you know this man? Have you seen him? Does he work here?" Most shook their heads. Some said, maybe. Maybe is Tokyo's favorite lie when you don't want trouble. Then a break came from a place no one liked to look, the lost and found system. Tokyo has a bureaucracy for everything, including what people drop. Umbrellas, wallets, bags, keys, each catalogued, each stored, each given a number. A detective with too much time and a stubborn streak requested a list of clear vinyl umbrellas turned in around October and November 1995, across multiple stations. Hundreds. Thousands. A sea of plastic. But he wasn't looking for umbrellas. He was looking for placement. He was looking for the ones that weren't found lying on the ground, but found standing upright. That language existed, rarely, in handwritten notes by attendants who bothered to describe the oddness. He found 5 entries over 18 months. Umbrellas, standing by vending machine, standing near payphone, standing at stairwell. Different precincts. Different stations. Same behavior. It wasn't proof, but it was a signature, like a calling card left without understanding how loud it was to people listening for it. The team mapped the stations where upright umbrellas had been reported. Lines intersected. Patterns emerged, not a neat circle, but a drift. A path between Ikeburo, Karakuan, Shinjuku, Shinokubo, and a small station near Waseda. The route felt like someone moving with intention, using the subway as a corridor, comfortable in its flow. They requested security cooperation again, deeper this time, and that's when friction started, because the Tokyo Metro didn't want headlines about abductors in the system. They wanted quiet. They offered limited access. They denied certain records. The detectives pushed. Meetings became tense. Men in suits with polite voices said impossible and unlikely. Detectives with tired eyes said, then explain the exit records. The subway authority insisted that tailgating could happen, that gates could be bypassed, that people could exit without tapping. But the odds of it happening repeatedly, in similar cases, felt like the kind of luck that belongs to predators. As pressure built, the press sniffed it out. A tabloid ran a piece about the Umbrella Man, an unnamed figure linked to multiple disappearances. The public reaction was immediate and ugly. People laughed at first. What kind of criminal leaves umbrellas, until more women began to recall moments on platforms, men too close, hands visible, polite smiles. The story spread through office gossip and late-night radio. Mothers began telling daughters not just to watch for dark alleys, but for well-lit stations, for men who seemed ordinary. Then came the call. It was to Oki's mother, on a rainy evening in mid-December, the kind of rain that makes you think of October even when the calendar says winter. The phone rang once, twice. She answered with hope she hated herself for still having. The line was quiet. A breath. Then a voice, male, low, calm, not slurred, not rushed. He didn't say Oki's name. He didn't say his own. He spoke in Japanese, but with something off in the rhythm, like a person who had learned it carefully. He said, "Stop looking." And then, after a pause that felt like him savoring the sound of her fear, he added, "She saw me." Click. Oki's mother screamed for the police, hands shaking, tears sudden. Detectives swarmed her apartment, traced the call as far as 1995 technology allowed. It had come from a public phone in Ikeburo. Of course it had. The same neighborhood as the postcard. The same neighborhood as the earlier call. It was as if someone wanted to keep pointing there, daring them to catch up. They rushed to Ikeburo, fanning out around the station, eyes sharp, radios crackling. But Ikeburo at night is a moving puzzle. Arcades, bars, commuters, students, lovers, gang scouts. A man could make a call, walk 20 meters, and vanish into a crowd that didn't even know it had swallowed him. They searched the public phones anyway. They checked the coin return slots. They checked the ground for cigarette butts. They checked for fingerprints on the receiver. They found smudges. Too many. They found a faint oily residue on the handset, the kind left by hair product or machine grease. They bagged it. Forensics later said it wasn't enough to identify, but it suggested someone who worked with lubricants, with engines, with mechanical parts. A technician. A mechanic. A maintenance worker. Or simply a man who liked to keep his hair slick in the rain. The detectives were trapped between too much and too little. They had a signature behavior. A tremor. A smile. A voice. But no name. No address. No body. No confession. Just the deepening certainty that Oki wasn't the only one. And then, as the year turned and Tokyo performed its ritual of forgetting, New Year's shrines, first sunrise, fresh calendars, a new witness emerged from the edges of the city, a woman who worked nights cleaning offices near Karakuan. She'd been scared to talk, she said, because the man had looked at her like she was air, and that was worse than being seen. She told detectives that on the night Oki disappeared, she had been taking trash out to a service alley behind a building adjacent to the station. She heard footsteps, measured, unhurried. She saw a man in a dark coat guiding a woman through a maintenance gate with a key, not forcing her, not dragging her, guiding her, like a dance. The woman held a clear umbrella, even though they were undercover. The cleaner said the woman's face was pale, eyes wide, lips pressed tight. The man's left hand shook as he turned the key, and he murmured something that sounded like reassurance. The cleaner had pretended not to see. That was the instinct in Tokyo. Don't make trouble, don't be involved, don't pull a stranger's disaster into your own life. But since the postcard, since the TV chatter, since the call to Oki's mother, she couldn't sleep. Her guilt became heavier than her fear. Detectives took her to the alley. The maintenance gate was there, painted dull gray, blending into concrete. They asked who had keys. The list was short: station staff, contracted maintenance, a handful of building managers. Names on paper. Men with uniforms. Men with access. Men who could walk through doors without being questioned. They began pulling those names, one by one, and somewhere in that list, hidden among the ordinary, was the person who could make a woman vanish in the brightest city on earth, and still have the nerve to whisper into her mother's phone line like a confession disguised as a warning. The list of key holders looked harmless on paper, a bland roster of men with stamped ID numbers and predictable lives, but the detectives treated it like a minefield because that was the only way to walk through it without losing their nerve, and they started where the gate's history was thickest, the contractors who handled late-night maintenance around Karakuan, the ones who knew which doors squealed, which cameras blinked out for a minute when the wiring heated, which corridors stayed empty after the last train, because everyone assumed nobody would be there. They pulled employment files. They checked shift sheets. They requested signatures, handwriting samples, anything that could be compared against the block-stamped message and the postcard's timing. It was tedious, slow, the kind of work that makes a case die quietly if you're not stubborn enough to keep breathing on it, and for weeks they got nothing but small disappointments, men with clean records, men with alibis, men with tremors caused by age or alcohol, men who wore dark coats, because Tokyo winter requires it. Then a junior detective noticed a small inconsistency, the kind you only see when you've stared at documents long enough for your eyes to start inventing patterns. One contractor, listed as temporary, appeared on shift rosters in multiple stations that matched the upright umbrella map, Ikeburo, Karakuan, Shinokubo, never in the same week, never long enough to be remembered, always filling gaps, always the kind of name you'd overlook, because the system itself treated him like a replaceable part. His name was written two ways on different forms, H. Takahara on one, Haruki Takahara on another, either a clerical error or a deliberate blur. His address was a company dormitory that housed dozens of workers. His emergency contact number was missing. The detectives circled it in red, not because it was proof, but because it smelled like a man whose life had been filed down to smoothness. They brought Takahara in quietly, at first, the way you approach a wild animal, no sirens, no uniforms at the door, just two plainclothes officers who asked politely if he could come answer a few questions, and he did, which was its own kind of confidence. In the interview room, fluorescent light made everyone look guilty, but Takahara's face didn't shift. Mid-30s. Average height. Dark hair cut short, neat. His hands rested on the table, fingers interlaced, and the left hand trembled, just once, a small ripple he immediately controlled by pressing his thumb into his knuckle. The detective watching him felt a cold awareness slide across his spine, because that tremor matched the clerk's memory, matched the witness on the train, matched the cleaner in the alley. Takahara smiled when he was greeted, and it wasn't warm. It was polite. It was practiced. It was the kind of smile you give when you've learned that people relax when you offer them something normal. They asked where he was on October 18, 1995. He blinked slowly, as if calculating. He said he didn't remember. They asked if he worked Karakuan that week. He said maybe. They showed him the CCTV still from the platform, grainy, but clear enough in the shape of the face. He leaned forward slightly, eyes narrowing, and then he laughed under his breath like someone watching a joke only he understood. That could be anyone, he said. The detectives kept their voices steady. They asked about the gate key, about the service alley. He said he had access sometimes, yes, but lots of people did. They asked if he knew Oki Sakamoto. His eyes didn't move. He said no. They asked about the postcard. About Ikeburo. About English block stamps. The tremor in his left hand pulsed again, a little longer, and the lead detective noted it not as guilt, but a stress response, the body betraying what the face refused. Takahara's smile returned, briefly, and he said, "You watch too much television." It landed like a slap, because television was exactly what had turned the public into a chorus of fear, and here was a man who spoke as if fear was entertainment. They didn't have enough to hold him. They had no warrant, no physical evidence tying him to the umbrella, no DNA match, no fingerprints, no witness willing to swear in court. The case was a net full of holes. They released him after 4 hours. He bowed politely on the way out. His left hand shook when he adjusted his coat. The detectives followed him anyway. They tailed him through the evening rush, across streets slick with rain, through crowds that could swallow a man like a mouth. He moved with the confidence of someone who knows where cameras are and doesn't mind them. He bought cigarettes from a convenience store, but didn't smoke them. He bought a coffee and threw it away after one sip. He stood outside Ikeburo station for 10 minutes, watching the flow like a fisherman watching water, and then he boarded a train. At Shinjuku, he got off. Shinjuku again. The case kept circling that station like a bird that couldn't land. The detectives watched him walk past the west exit vending machines, past the spot where Oki's umbrella had been found standing upright. He didn't pause. He didn't look. But his shoulders tightened for a fraction of a second and then relaxed. A subconscious response. A muscle memory. He slipped into Kabukicho, neon bruising the wet air, and vanished inside a narrow building with a sign that promised karaoke rooms and cheap whiskey. The detectives waited outside, shifting under awnings, radios muted. After an hour, Takahara emerged with 2 men, rougher, louder, the kind who moved with territorial arrogance. They laughed. Takahara smiled. The men patted his shoulder like he belonged. The detectives felt the case take on a new texture. This wasn't just a lone predator. This smelled like protection, like a small network of people who didn't ask questions when money changed hands. They ran the 2 men's plates when they left. One car was registered to a small transport company. The other was registered to a private citizen, with a history of assault charges that had been dropped. Tokyo had ways of making certain problems disappear quietly. The squad chief wanted to strike fast, wanted warrants, raids, pressure, but the prosecutor's office was stone. No body, no arrest. No arrest, no headline risk. They were told to build the case properly, which in practice meant watching the trail cool while paperwork piled up. So the detectives did what they could: surveillance, interviews, quiet checks. They discovered Takahara's employment history was a patchwork, jumping between contractors, never staying long enough to accumulate friends. They discovered he had once worked at a luggage storage facility near Ikeburo. Coin lockers again, the same ecosystem of anonymity. They discovered he had a small rented room in a building near Waseda, paid month to month in cash. They got a warrant for that room on a technicality, a labor dispute complaint filed against his contractor that allowed limited search for company property. It was thin. It was desperate. But it opened the door. Inside, the room was clean in a way that felt staged. No clutter. No personal photos. A futon folded tight. A single cheap desk. A small toolbox. A stack of magazines about trains and transit systems, timetables, maintenance manuals, station maps. On the wall, pinned with careful symmetry, were photographs clipped from newspapers, missing women. Small faces. Big headlines. Oki's photo was there. So was Rina Nishikawa's. So was the Kabukicho hostess. The detectives stared at that wall and felt the air thicken, because this was not a man who didn't know these women. This was a man collecting them like trophies, not in the crude way of a killer who keeps jewelry, but in the colder way of someone who wanted to own the story people told about his work. They photographed everything. Bagged everything. Then one detective opened a desk drawer and found a stamp set, block capital letters, the kind sold in hobby shops. There was also a small ink pad, nearly dry. It wasn't enough. It was suggestive. But suggestive doesn't convict. The prosecutor would say it could be used for crafts, for labeling storage boxes, for office work. The detectives felt fury press behind their eyes like a headache. Then they found the cassette. Not Oki's cassette. Another. Unlabeled. Wrapped in a plastic bag to protect it from humidity. The detective who held it felt his fingers go numb, because a cassette is a time capsule, and time capsules in murder cases are rarely kind. They rushed it to evidence. They played it in a controlled room with 2 officers and a technician, and the sick awareness that whatever they heard would live inside them afterward. At first, static. A hiss like rain on concrete. Then footsteps. Then a male voice, close to the microphone, speaking softly in Japanese, calm, instructive, like someone explaining a safety procedure. Breathe. Slowly. Don't make noise. A pause. A faint whimper, female. The technician glanced at the detectives, eyes wide. The male voice continued, still calm, still polite, if you cooperate, you won't be hurt. A pause. The female voice said something too quiet to catch. Then the male voice, you saw me. That's the problem. And then a sound that made the room freeze, a train passing, not distant, but close, as if the recording was made near tracks, near the metal scream of a tunnel. The cassette didn't say Oki's name. It didn't include a date. It didn't include a clear scream. It didn't include the finality detectives wanted. But it was a voice that matched the phone call to Oki's mother in timbre and rhythm, and it carried the same phrase like a signature burned into the air. They sent it for voice analysis, the limited kind available at the time. The technician said it was consistent. Consistent was the best they could get. They brought Takahara back in. This time, he didn't look surprised. He sat down like a man arriving for a scheduled appointment. The lead detective placed the cassette on the table in front of him, still in its evidence bag. Takahara's eyes flicked to it and back, the tiniest crack in composure. The left hand trembled hard, a longer shake, and he tucked it under the table, as if hiding the betrayal. The detective said, "We found this in your room." Takahara's smile returned, but it was thinner now, stretched. He said, "It's not mine." The detective played the tape. As the male voice spoke, Takahara's face stayed calm, but the muscles in his jaw tightened so sharply it looked painful. When the phrase, "You saw me" came, Takahara's eyes narrowed, and for one instant his expression held something like irritation, as if hearing his own words repeated back to him felt like theft. The tape ended. Silence filled the room like smoke. The lead detective leaned forward, voice low. "Where is Oki Sakamoto?" Takahara's smile faded. He said, "You don't know what you're touching." That sentence shifted the room. It wasn't denial. It wasn't fear. It was warning. The detectives pushed harder. They asked about the photographs on his wall. He said he collected newspaper clippings like many people. They asked why he had missing women, specifically. He said, "It's interesting." Interesting. The coldest word in the world when applied to someone else's vanishing. They asked about access keys. He admitted he sometimes had keys, as part of work. They asked why a cleaner saw him using a maintenance gate. He said, "Many men wear coats." They asked about the stamp set. He said, "Lots of people use stamps." They asked about the tremor. He looked at his left hand like it was an inconvenience and said, "Old injury." The lead detective could feel the case slipping again, like grabbing wet rope. Because even with the tape, even with the wall of clippings, the prosecutor still hesitated. There was no direct link to Oki, no item of hers in his room, no blood, no hair, no exit record, no body. The defense would call it obsession, not crime. The tape could be dismissed as role play, as a prank, as something recorded for a different purpose. The detectives argued until their voices went hoarse. The prosecutor demanded a location. A place. A victim. Something concrete. So they went back to the phrase, "You don't know what you're touching." It sounded like paranoia. It sounded like someone with connections. Someone who believed he had protection, or truly did. The squad quietly requested background checks through channels that didn't leave paper trails. They dug into Takahara's past, not the sanitized employment files, but the shadow behind them, school history, family ties, old police contacts. What they found wasn't dramatic. No powerful politician father. No famous relative. Just a small note buried in juvenile records. At 16, Takahara had been questioned in connection with a series of peeping incidents near a girls' school, complaints of a man watching from behind vending machines, hands visible, smiling when caught. He was released. Lack of evidence. The complaints stopped shortly after. The behavior evolved. A predator grows up. A city grows around him. And then he learns to use it. They searched for places where he could hide someone without leaving a trace: maintenance rooms, unused storage, abandoned tunnels. They pulled old station renovation plans. They learned that Korakuen had an old service spur tunnel sealed off years earlier, accessible from a maintenance door behind a locked panel. A dead artery. A place where a scream could be swallowed by distance and machinery. They requested access. The transit authority refused, citing safety. The detectives threatened to go public. Meetings happened. Voices stayed polite. Eyes stayed hard. Finally, under pressure, they were allowed a supervised inspection, 1 hour, accompanied by station managers. 1 hour in a tunnel that might have held a woman's last breaths for months. They entered wearing masks and lights, the air stale, damp, thick with metal and dust. Their flashlights cut cones through darkness, revealing old cables, rusted rails, puddles that reflected like black glass. The tunnel curved away, and for a moment the detectives felt the weight of Tokyo above them, millions of feet moving over their heads, laughter, commerce, life, while underneath, in the city's bones, there could be a pocket where a person simply stopped existing. Halfway down, they found something that made one detective stop so abruptly the others nearly collided with him: a clear vinyl umbrella, collapsed, wedged behind a stack of old signage. It wasn't standing. It was crumpled like trash. But clear umbrellas all look the same until you know where they've been. The handle had a faint nick near the base, a small gouge. The detective remembered the photograph from Oki's apartment, an umbrella with a nick like that, noted by her mother as the one she always used. They bagged it. Their hands shook, not from cold, but from the sudden nearness of the thing they'd been chasing through paper for months. In that dead tunnel, under the loudest city in Japan, they had found the kind of object that doesn't belong unless someone carried it there. And if someone carried it there, then someone had walked these rails with a woman who didn't want to be here. A woman holding an umbrella, as if plastic could protect her from what was about to happen. The hour ended. The station managers urged them back, tight smiles returning. The detectives filed out into fluorescent light like swimmers surfacing from a dark lake. They had an umbrella. They had a tape. They had a suspect with a tremor and a wall of missing faces. But they still didn't have Oki. And in the cruel arithmetic of law, a case can have everything except the one thing that forces the world to accept it: the person who is gone. The umbrella from the sealed spur tunnel didn't feel like an object anymore. It felt like a finger pressed to the lips of the city, a quiet command that said you're close enough to smell it now, and the detectives, who carried it out of Korakuen, kept their faces blank as they crossed the platform, because Tokyo punishes visible urgency. It invites questions. It attracts eyes. And eyes are dangerous when you're hunting someone who survives by looking like everybody. The evidence bag crinkled under the fluorescent lights, clear plastic inside clear plastic, and the absurdity of it hit hard. An umbrella, the cheapest thing in the rain, suddenly treated like a relic, like a bone from a buried story. Forensics took it, photographed the nick on the handle, compared it against the mother's description, ran their fingertips over it as if touch alone could summon the missing. They lifted prints and got the same curse as before, partials, smudges, fragments, 1,000 anonymous hands from a city where everyone grips something every day. They swabbed for residue, hair, skin cells, anything that might have clung in that damp tunnel air. The results came back thin and maddening, trace fibers, common synthetic, and a faint streak of machine grease that matched the handset residue from the ICA Bureau payphone. Not a smoking gun. Not an arrest. But the same odor drifting through different scenes like a signature carried on wind. The prosecutor listened to the new findings with the patience of a man whose job is to say no until the world forces a yes, and he asked the one question that always landed like a cold coin on the tongue. Can you prove she was there? Not the umbrella. Not the rumor. Not the vibe. Her. Flesh. Breath. Oki Sakamoto. The detectives argued until the edges of their voices frayed, pointing at the cassette, the wall of clippings, the tremor, the witnesses, the tunnel access, the phone call. The prosecutor's expression didn't change. He said the word again, softer this time as if softness made it kinder, body. Without it, the case was a storm trapped in a bottle. It could rage forever and still never break glass. So the detectives went looking for something that could substitute for a body in court. An object that belonged only to Oki, an item she had carried that night, something with her DNA, or her handwriting, or her scent of detergent and cigarettes, an ordinary life. They tore through her apartment again with fresh eyes, looking not for what was missing, but for what had been left behind too neatly. They flipped the futon. They checked the plumbing access panel. They pulled books off the shelf and found, behind a row of paperbacks, a thin envelope with no stamp. Inside was a small photograph of Oki standing under a cherry tree, smiling toward the camera with a softness her missing poster never captured. On the back, in pen, was a date and 2 letters, 4/12 L. The same L from the notebook, now anchored to a spring day, a quiet outing, a private memory. Oki had kept it hidden like something precious, or something dangerous. They showed the photo to friends. One friend's face tightened, and she admitted Oki had mentioned a man who liked to take pictures of her as practice, like photography was his hobby, his excuse. She said the man always chose places where crowds moved behind Oki like flowing water, stations, parks near train lines, pedestrian bridges, places where a camera never looked suspicious. The friend said Oki once joked that he had a worker's hands, rough fingertips, grease under nails that never fully disappeared. The word grease hung in the air like a hook. The detectives returned to Takahara's room and searched again under a broader warrant, this time framed around unlawful possession of transit materials and intimidation of a victim's family. They found nothing new at first, only the same sterile emptiness, the same magazines, the same clipped faces, the same stamp kit. Then, behind the toolbox, tucked into the corner like a secret the room itself wanted to keep, they found a small black notebook wrapped in plastic. Inside were station codes written in tight, careful characters, dates, times, and short notes that looked like instructions: west exit, vending, locker row 3, maintenance panel, loose, Karakuan, spur door. It read less like a diary and more like a manual, a predator's field guide to Tokyo's blind spots. On one page, a single line was underlined twice: KND 2129. Kanda. 9:29 p.m. The exact time of Oki's entrance beep. They had something now that wasn't coincidence. They had a note that aligned too perfectly to dismiss, written by a man who claimed he knew nothing about Oki, and the detectives felt the case tilt, just slightly, toward gravity. They brought Takahara in again, but this time they didn't treat him like a fish they were trying not to scare. This time the room had a prosecutor present, and the air was sharper. They placed the notebook on the table and watched Takahara's eyes track it before he could stop them. They asked him to explain, KND 2129. Takahara's mouth twitched, not a smile, not quite. He said, "It's a schedule." The prosecutor said, "For what?" Takahara's left hand trembled so hard the table vibrated faintly, and he pressed his palm flat, trying to pin his own nerves to wood. "For work," he said. The prosecutor leaned forward. "You were a temporary contractor. You didn't make schedules." Takahara's eyes lifted then, and for a moment his politeness slipped, revealing something flat and bored underneath, as if he'd grown tired of pretending. "You think you found your monster," he said. "You need one." The prosecutor's voice stayed even. "Where is she?" Takahara breathed out slowly, almost amused. "She's not in your papers," he said, and the sentence felt like a knife, because it sounded rehearsed, like he'd practiced it alone in his clean room while missing faces stared back at him from the wall. They held him overnight on intimidation and unlawful possession. It was thin. It was a wedge. But wedges can open doors if you keep hammering. And then the door slammed from the other side. The next afternoon, Takahara's attorney arrived with the brisk confidence of someone who had been called before the police even finished typing the arrest notice. The attorney was not famous, not flashy, but he moved like a man who knew which hands to shake. He presented documents that made the prosecutor's face harden, claims of improper search, of overreach, of evidence obtained without correct procedure in the first warrant. The Transit Authority submitted a complaint about unauthorized access to restricted tunnel areas, arguing safety violations. The prosecutor, already reluctant, now had an excuse to retreat. Takahara was released again, and the detectives watched him walk out with the same controlled posture, dark coat draped like armor, left hand tucked into his pocket, as if hiding the tremor, or hiding the satisfaction. The squad chief exploded behind closed doors, shouting into a room full of tired men, who had done everything except produce a corpse, and Tokyo's rules remained what they always are, polite on the surface, brutal underneath. Without airtight procedure, evidence becomes a rumor in court. Without a body, even airtight evidence can still be treated like a story. So the detectives changed tactics. If they couldn't hold Takahara, they would force him to move. Predators rely on stillness, on the assumption that the world forgets faster than they do. The detectives put pressure where paper couldn't be challenged: surveillance, visibility, presence. They parked unmarked cars near Takahara's building. They tailed him close enough that he could feel it. They made sure he saw them in reflections, in store windows, in the dark glass of train doors. It was a message without words: we are here. We are not blinking. Takahara responded the way disciplined criminals respond. He became more careful, more bland, more ordinary. He changed routes. He rode different lines. He entered stations and walked out without boarding, checking for tails. He visited Ikeburo at odd hours, stopped at a public phone, lifted the receiver without dialing, listened, then hung up. He bought clear umbrellas from convenience stores even on sunny days, and carried them like props. Sometimes he left one standing somewhere, near a vending machine, beside a stairwell, and the detectives hated how it felt like mockery, like he was turning their own pattern recognition into his performance. One night, just before midnight, he went to a laundromat near Shinokubo. Not a flashy place, just humming machines behind fogged glass. The detectives watched from across the street as he loaded a washer and sat down, posture relaxed. A woman entered 5 minutes later, young, hair tied back, umbrella in hand. She looked tired. She looked like someone who had been told to be careful, but needed to get home. Takahara's head turned slightly as she passed, his eyes tracking her with a small, calm interest. The detective in the surveillance car felt his throat tighten, because he could see the mechanism starting, the slow lean of attention, the silent evaluation of risk. The woman sat across from him. Their eyes met. Takahara smiled. The detective's hand hovered over the radio. They couldn't intervene without cause. They couldn't scare the woman into panic without proof. The law was a leash, and the suspect held the other end by being just ordinary enough. Takahara stood, approached the woman's machine, gestured toward the coin slot as if offering help. The woman shook her head, polite, and Takahara stepped back, still smiling. He didn't push. He didn't insist. He just returned to his seat, and the detective realized with a cold jolt that this wasn't failure, it was testing. Takahara wasn't hunting recklessly. He was probing the edges of surveillance like a rat tasting air. When Takahara left, he didn't follow the woman. He walked calmly into the night, and the detectives followed him instead, frustration burning. He moved toward the back streets of Shinokubo, past bars and cheap hotels, and stopped at a building with no sign. He entered through a side door with a code keypad. The detectives couldn't follow without blowing the tail. They noted the address, ran it the next day. The building belonged to a storage company, private rooms rented monthly, no questions asked, cash accepted. Tokyo's answer to guilt: rent a box and pretend nothing inside matters. They got a warrant the only way they could, by tying it to the intimidation call and the stamped postcard, arguing that the storage unit could contain materials used in harassment. It was another thin wedge, but thin wedges have sharp edges if you push hard enough. The unit was on the 3rd floor, a narrow corridor lined with metal doors, each one a sealed mouth. The air smelled of dust and cardboard. The officers unlocked the door and swung it open. Inside, stacked neatly, were clear umbrellas. Dozens. Some new. Some used. Some with handles nicked, scratched, worn. There were boxes of stamp supplies. Ink pads. Stationery. Camera film. Old disposable cameras with their plastic bodies dulled by fingerprints. There were also notebooks, more of them, each wrapped in plastic, labeled with station codes and dates. It wasn't a shrine. It was an inventory. A system. And in the back, covered by a tarp, was a metal chair bolted to a wooden platform. The detectives froze. The prosecutor's fear of nobody suddenly felt like a luxury, because places speak even when people don't. A chair bolted down is not furniture. It is intention. It is control. They searched the unit with gloved hands and tight mouths. In one box, beneath a layer of umbrellas, they found a hair clip, simple black plastic. The kind sold in any store. But Oki's mother recognized it immediately when shown a photo, because she had bought it for her daughter, and had complained it looked too plain. She wore it all the time, the mother said, voice cracking in a way that wasn't dramatic, just broken. The detectives bagged it like it was fragile life. In another box, they found a cassette tape labeled in black marker with a single kana character that looked like a shorthand note. They played it in a lab. This time, the female voice was clearer, strained, whispering a name once, so faint it felt like it might vanish if you leaned too hard on it. Oki, the voice said, as if reminding itself it existed. The male voice responded, calm, close, amused. Names are noisy, he said. Quiet. The technicians isolated the male voice and compared it again to the phone call, to the earlier tape. The match was still only consistent, not absolute. But the accumulation mattered. Consistent stacked on consistent becomes weight. The detectives returned to arrest Takahara. He wasn't home. His room was empty. The wall of clippings was gone. The stamp kit gone. The magazines gone. He had cleaned himself out like a man who had always planned for the moment the door would open. The landlord said Takahara had paid 2 months in advance and left no forwarding address. The contractor said he quit without notice. The dorm said he had moved out quietly 2 days earlier. 2 days. That meant he had felt the net closing and had slipped through before it could tighten. That meant he had been watching the detectives watching him, measuring their patience, learning their patterns the way they tried to learn his. The squad chief stared at the empty room and felt the kind of rage that makes your vision narrow, because the storage unit had been there, a warehouse of signatures and tools, and still the man had walked away. Still the city had allowed him to dissolve into its million faces. But the storage unit also did something else. It changed the case from missing to something heavier in the eyes of everyone who mattered. The prosecutor's stance shifted, not to certainty, but to urgency. Warrants expanded. Bulletins went out. The transit authority, now cornered by the implication that their system had been used as a hunting ground, began cooperating in earnest, not out of kindness, but out of self-preservation. Photos from the platform stills were distributed wider. The tremor detail was included. The phrase, "She saw Emmy," became a code whispered between detectives like an incantation, something that summoned the same man no matter which station he chose. Tokyo, meanwhile, kept moving. Trains arrived. Doors opened. People stepped in, heads down, hands full, ordinary lives packed into carriages like cargo. Somewhere inside that flow, a man with a dark coat could stand perfectly still, left hand tucked away, smile ready, watching the reflections in the window, waiting for the moment someone's eyes met his and recognized him, because that, always, was the point. Being seen wasn't a risk to him. Being seen was the trigger. And as the city's lights burned too bright against the winter rain, the detectives felt the worst kind of certainty settle into their bones. If Takahara was free, then the case wasn't just unsolved. It was still happening. Tokyo never announces when it tightens its fist. It just closes around streets you walked yesterday, and suddenly every station feels like a throat. The morning the metro posted the grainy stills, commuters slowed near bulletin boards as if the paper could bite. A face in a dark coat, average features, half-lidded eyes, the caption blunt, wanted for questioning. Bad enough to be anyone, good enough to haunt everyone. The task force turned the city into pressure. Plainclothes officers rode lines in loops until their legs burned, stepping in, stepping out, watching hands, watching for the small involuntary tremor that had become their compass. They worked gates, vending machines, coin lockers, payphones. The hotline screamed with fear. A man smiling too long. A man standing too close. A man carrying a clear umbrella on a sunny day. Most tips were panic. A few were sharp, simple, and wrong in a way that felt real. Takahara didn't give them routine. He dissolved the way Tokyo teaches you to dissolve, become ordinary, then become nothing. He stopped appearing where they expected, changed lines, changed hours, moved with the crowd so perfectly that any tale looked like imagination. The city didn't protect him on purpose. It protected him because it never stopped moving. Just before midnight, a station cleaner at Kanamecho called with a voice that sounded like guilt. He'd seen a man at the far end of the platform where cameras didn't quite reach. The man wasn't reading the timetable. He was watching arriving train windows, studying reflections. The cleaner remembered because the man held a clear umbrella under the roof, like a prop, like a signature he couldn't stop touching. The task force decided to bait him. Waiting felt like surrender, and the fear outside their door had started to roar. They chose an undercover officer young enough to pass as a tired commuter, steady enough to keep her breathing flat, trained enough to let fear show only where it would work. She carried a clear umbrella and boarded at Ikeburo at 11:53 p.m., the hour when the city looks exhausted and predators start to feel bold. Rain hammered the rails, loud enough to make every carriage sound like it was pushing through a storm. The undercover took a spot near the door, umbrella folded but visible, her reflection floating in the dark window glass. 2 stops later, surveillance whispered that a man matching the stills had been seen at Kanemecho. He waited until the train arrived, then stepped in with the calm of someone entering his own apartment. He stood across from her without seeming to. Right hand on the strap. Left hand buried. Face forgettable, eyes that didn't need to be sharp to be dangerous. She caught the smell first, oil and metal softened by soap, a technician's scent, or an imitation. He looked at the window, not at her, and in the reflection his eyes met hers. She held the gaze half a second too long, a controlled mistake. His mouth curved into that polite smile, smooth as a practiced tool. He leaned closer just enough that it wouldn't read as threat to anyone who didn't know how to read. His voice arrived soft and calm, the way you speak when you don't want the world to hear you breaking it. "You're careful," he said, crisp Japanese, deliberate. "Careful people still make noise." Her throat tightened. She shifted her umbrella slightly like a shield, letting the gesture say fear without panic. His smile widened a fraction, as if pleased. He nodded toward the next stop. "Get off," he said, still polite, as if offering directions. The train slowed into Higoshinagasaki, quieter than the central swarm, a station that felt like a pocket of shadow between louder neighborhoods. The doors opened. He stepped out. The undercover stepped out behind him, heart hammering like a drum. She had to keep silent. He didn't grab her. He didn't touch her. He simply walked, confident she would follow, and the most terrifying part was that she did, because the case demanded it. He moved toward a side stairwell leading down to a service corridor marked employees only. A keypad sat beside the door. He typed a code with his right hand without hesitation. The lock clicked. He turned slightly and waited, eyes patient, offering her a choice that wasn't a choice at all. Behind her, surveillance teams closed in, measured steps, faces blank. The plan was to take him inside the corridor, away from the platform crowd. But he didn't need to turn around. He tilted his head, listening, and something changed in his expression, not fear, not surprise, but calculation. He glanced at the service door's glass panel and saw reflections approaching, men trying too hard to look like commuters. His smile vanished. His left hand came out of his pocket, tremor visible now, a sharp flicker like a stutter in flesh. In the same motion his fingers closed around a slim canister. The undercover flinched before her training could stop her. Someone surged too soon. Someone barked a command. The spell shattered. The sting hit like betrayal. A spray cut the air and turned lungs into fire, eyes into waterfalls. People coughed and stumbled, hands clawing at faces, voices rising into confusion. The platform became chaos in seconds, a living curtain of bodies, and he used it with terrifying skill. An officer lunged and caught his coat sleeve. Fabric tore. He twisted free, ducked under an arm, and vanished down the street stairs into rain and headlights, swallowed by the city. By the time officers fought through the coughing crowd, he was gone. Detectives stood under the station awning afterward, rain dripping from hair, throats burning, shame thick as smoke. They had heard his voice live. They had been close enough to touch him. He slipped away using the same principle that had taken Oki, chaos and anonymity. That night, a clear umbrella was reported standing upright outside a late-night clinic near the same station, handle facing the street like an invitation. No note. No prints. Just the silent message of a man, who knew he'd escaped and wanted them to taste it. They narrowed. They rewound the failure and demanded access logs for the employee door. The railway company resisted until the prosecutor leaned hard, until public fear became leverage. The logs showed the door had been accessed minutes before the train arrived using a valid employee credential number, someone else's. They traced it to a night technician who repaired vending machines across multiple stations, a man the city never noticed, because the city runs on men like him. He'd reported a lost badge 2 weeks earlier in Ikeburo, and had been issued a new one. When detectives asked if anyone had approached him, offered help, asked casual questions about routes, he hesitated, then admitted a man in a dark coat had chatted with him near a vending machine, smiling, hands visible, voice calm. The badge wasn't just a key. It was method. Takahara didn't need to force doors if he could borrow authority in plain sight. The detectives went back to the storage unit inventory and stared at the boxes of disposable cameras until a new thought took shape. Cameras meant photographs. Photographs meant negatives. Negatives meant a trace, because in 1995 you didn't take pictures without leaving them in a lab unless you processed them yourself. They visited small photo processing shops near Ikeburo and Waseda with the stills. Most clerks shrugged. Then an elderly woman, owner of a narrow shop squeezed between a pachinko parlor and a ramen stall, stiffened when she saw the image. She said a man like that had come in months earlier, paid in coins, asked for fast processing, and never once let his eyes leave the counter. She returned with a cardboard box of unclaimed negatives. He didn't come back, she said. Under lab light, most strips were nothing, station signs, blurred crowds, umbrellas like ghosts. Then one strip made the room go silent. A close-up of a young woman's face, eyes wide, lit by harsh fluorescent light as if taken in a narrow industrial room. Her hair was clipped back with a plain black clip. Behind her, a metal wall with a painted number half visible, like a label on a locked door. Another frame caught her, hands raised near her chest, fingers tense, the image trembling as if the photographer's hand had shaken. They enlarged the face and compared it to Oki Sakamoto's missing poster. The curve of the cheek. The line of the nose. The spacing of the eyes. Not perfect, but close enough to make hardened men stop breathing. Oki, after Kenda. Oki, somewhere behind a door the public never sees. Proof finally had a shape. Proof that the nightmare was real. And while the negatives trembled between gloved fingers, the wall phone rang. A detective answered with a voice sharpened by sleeplessness. For a moment there was only breathing on the line, slow and controlled, and then careful Japanese arrived, calm as rain on concrete. You almost made noise, the voice said softly, with the faintest hint of amusement, and the line clicked dead, leaving the room full of men staring at a photograph that couldn't speak, while the city outside kept moving like nothing had happened. The negatives sat on the lab table like a small, poisonous miracle, thin strips of plastic holding a woman's fear in black and white, and the detectives leaned in until the light warmed their faces, studying every grain, every blur, every accidental corner of background that might betray a location, because in a case like this the world doesn't hand you answers, it hands you edges, and you have to cut yourself on them until the shape appears. Oki's face, if it was Oki, was framed too close, too intimate, the kind of shot taken when the photographer wants proof of possession, and behind her the metal wall showed a painted number, half hidden, the curve of a 3, or maybe an 8, thick industrial paint worn at the edges, and just beside it a seam where two panels met like the mouth of a freight elevator. The lighting was wrong for a station platform. Too harsh. Too constant. Fluorescent tubes in a narrow space, the kind maintenance workers use when no one is supposed to see what they are fixing. They passed the strip to transit engineers who pretended to be calm, hands steady, eyes not quite meeting the detectives, because they could feel the scandal crawling up the walls already, and one engineer pointed at the paint style, blocky, utilitarian, the same font used in old service corridors before the newer signage came in. He said the paneling looked like the interior of a decommissioned storage bay, and then he said the word that made the room tighten: substation. Electrical rooms. Relay bays. Service ducts. Places built to keep the city alive, not to keep secrets, but secrets love infrastructure, because nobody questions it. People avoid it. People don't look. People assume danger belongs there, so they stay away, and call it common sense. The task force moved fast, faster than procedure liked, because the phone call had told them something they didn't want to admit aloud: the man was watching them. He knew when they were close. He knew when they were loud. He could taste their momentum and step aside like a shadow. So they stopped talking on open lines. They stopped writing details on whiteboards. They used hand signals and closed doors and stale breath, and the city outside kept pouring rain into gutters like applause. They pulled every substation location along the cluster map: Ikeburo, Korakuen, Shinjuku, Shinokubo, Waseda, and narrowed by age, by paint, by access code history, by which ones had been renovated recently enough to change their interior paneling. 3 remained. 3 doors in a city of 10 million. 3 places where a woman could have been photographed while a man with a trembling left hand smiled behind a camera. They hit the first substation at 3:12 a.m., not with a raid team crashing through like television, but with quiet precision: locksmith, transit supervisor, 2 detectives, a prosecutor, whose face looked carved from fatigue. The metal door opened with a reluctant groan. The air inside was hot and dry, humming with the low electric heartbeat of the city. Cables ran like thick black veins. Everything smelled like metal and dust. No chair. No tape. No sign of a human being. Just the indifferent machinery that doesn't care what people do near it as long as it keeps powering their lights. The second substation was worse, not empty, but used. A small sleeping mat in the corner, a thermos, cigarette butts, the residue of someone spending hours there unnoticed. A maintenance logbook sat open on a shelf with fake entries scrawled in different handwriting, dates that didn't match shift sheets. A man had been there, living in the gap. But again, no Oki. No definitive proof. The prosecutor's jaw clenched. He could feel the case slipping back toward interesting instead of criminal. The third substation was under Shinjuku. Not the public Shinjuku. Not the flashing screens and crowds and taxis. Underneath, where tunnels forked into service arteries and the sound of the city became a muffled roar like an ocean heard through concrete. The transit supervisor leading them kept wiping sweat from his brow even though it was winter outside. "This area is restricted," he said, as if restriction itself was a defense. The detectives didn't answer. They followed the corridor deeper, past warning signs, past panels with locks old enough to have been installed when Tokyo still pretended it was smaller. Their flashlights painted trembling circles on the walls. Every footstep echoed. It felt like walking into the city's throat. The door they reached didn't have a station code on it. It had a number painted thickly in white, 38. In the negative, the curve could have been an 8. The thickness of paint matched. The style matched. The detectives glanced at each other without speaking, because hope is loud even when you don't voice it, and loud hope is a mistake. The locksmith worked quickly. The lock gave with a metallic cough. The door swung inward. The smell hit first. Not rot, something cleaner, colder. Disinfectant. Bleach. The smell of someone trying to erase what a room remembers. Fluorescent lights flickered on with a buzzing snap. The space inside was narrow, panel-lined, industrial, exactly like the negative hinted. And there, bolted to a wooden platform in the center, was a metal chair. Not the same chair from the storage unit. This one was heavier, older, scarred with scratches, the seat worn as if used too many times. Straps hung from the armrests, thick and dark, leather stiffened by sweat. A small drain ran along the floor toward a corner where a hose lay coiled like a sleeping snake. On a shelf, tape reels, blank cassettes, a box of disposable camera flash cubes, a stack of clear umbrellas still in plastic wrap. Inventory again. System again. The city's infrastructure repurposed into a factory of silence. The prosecutor stepped in, face pale, and for the first time, he didn't ask for a body. The room was a body. It was evidence made of concrete and straps and bleach. They searched with the kind of care you use when you're terrified of what you'll find. In a drawer beneath the shelf, they discovered a small bag of hair clips, black plastic, plain, identical to the one recovered from the storage unit, like the man had bought them in bulk, a cheap way to control hair, to control a person's face. They found a notebook sealed in plastic, pages filled with station times, codes, and short phrases in tight handwriting: quiet, watch reflection, umbrella upright, no name. On one page, underlined, was a sentence in English written with careful, almost childish precision: she saw me first. The lead detective felt his stomach tighten. The phrase wasn't just taunt. It was doctrine. A rule the man lived by. A rule he killed by. Then the forensics tech's voice cut through the hum. Here, he said, pointing at the underside of the chair. Something was stuck there, small, dried, overlooked in the rush of cleaning. A tiny flake of nail polish. Pale pink. In Oki's missing person photo, her nails were painted pale pink. It wasn't proof to a courtroom yet. It was proof to a human heart. They bagged everything. Swabbed everything. Photographed every angle. They called in more units, secured the corridor, tightened the perimeter. And while they were working, one detective noticed something that made his breath stall. The far wall's panel seam wasn't flush. It gaped slightly, as if opened and shut recently. A hidden door. The transit supervisor frowned, claiming ignorance. The locksmith knelt, tested it, found a latch disguised behind a conduit. The panel popped free with a hiss of trapped air. Behind it was a passageway, low and tight, leading into darkness. They went in. The passage smelled damp, old, like a place that had been sealed and then unsealed by someone who didn't care about mold or rats as long as it stayed invisible. They crawled and crouched, flashlights slicing narrow tunnels of sight. The passage opened into a larger chamber where old equipment sat stacked like forgotten bones. And on the floor, scattered among dust and debris, were more things that didn't belong: a torn page from a paperback in English, folded once, then crushed flat. A women's shoe heel snapped clean at the base. A scrap of fabric with a tiny stitched label from a laundromat in Nakano. Nakano. Oki's neighborhood. One detective swore under his breath, not in triumph, but in grief, because every small object was a personal universe reduced to trash. They followed the chamber to a second exit, an old service hatch that led up into a different corridor, one that connected, according to the transit engineer's murmured explanation, to a maintenance stairwell near the west exit vending machine area. The same area where Oki's umbrella had been found standing upright. The circuit closed with a sickening click. The man had been moving between public and hidden spaces like a fish between water and air. He could lift a woman out of a crowd, pull her through a door, photograph her under fluorescent light, and then walk back out into Shinjuku's neon with his coat dry and his smile intact. They had the room. They had the corridor. They had the path. They didn't have him. At 5:07 a.m., the station supervisor reported a power fluctuation in a separate service sector, brief, localized, like someone had opened and closed a panel they shouldn't. The task force snapped toward it, bodies moving with adrenaline, radios crackling. They ran the corridor, boots pounding, and reached a junction where the maintenance hall split. One team went left. One went right. Flashlights jittered. The air tasted like metal. Somewhere ahead, a door slammed. Not loud, but certain. They rounded the corner and saw him. For a half-second, in the harsh blue emergency lighting, the man in the dark coat stood at the end of the corridor, turned partly toward them. His face looked exactly like the still, exactly like the kind of face you could lose in a crowd. His left hand trembled as it held a clear umbrella, open, absurdly open indoors, the plastic dome catching the light like a halo. He wasn't running. He was watching. His mouth curved into that polite, practiced smile as if greeting strangers on a rainy day. Then he stepped backward through a service door and pulled it shut. The detectives hit it. It was locked. The locksmith scrambled. Someone shouted for tools. The door's panel buzzer clicked uselessly. The transit engineer swore. The prosecutor's voice rose, sharp, demanding. The lock finally gave. They burst through. And found an empty stairwell, the kind that spirals upward like a throat. Footsteps echoed above, receding fast. They chased, lungs burning, up and up, burst through a hatch. And spilled out into Shinjuku's west exit, dawn gray, commuters already gathering, umbrellas blooming like jellyfish in the rain. There was no way to chase a single dark coat through that ocean without drowning in civilian bodies, without turning the platform into panic. The man knew it. He had chosen the exit because he knew it. He had timed it because he knew the first wave of morning commuters would be the perfect camouflage, the perfect moving wall. A detective spotted a flicker of movement, dark coat cutting between vending machines, and sprinted, shouting, but the crowd swallowed his voice. Another officer tried to follow and collided with a businessman who cursed, furious at being delayed. The dark coat vanished behind a line of taxis. Tires hissed on wet pavement. Headlights flared. Then he was gone again, dissolved into the city like smoke. The task force stood in the rain with water dripping off their hair, and the taste of bleach and failure in their mouths, but something had changed. This wasn't the old frustration of guessing. This was the fresh fury of seeing him, breathing the same air, being close enough to hear the soft slap of his shoes on concrete. The man wasn't a ghost. He was flesh. He was moving. And he was choosing to remain unsolved. They returned underground and sealed room 38 like a crime scene temple. Forensics worked for days, pulling fibers, swabbing straps, collecting trace evidence from drains, scraping dried residue from corners where bleach hadn't reached. They found a partial fingerprint on the underside of a shelf, closer to complete than any before. They found hairs that weren't Oki's, suggesting other victims, other names never printed on posters. They found a fragment of skin embedded in a strap buckle, enough for a DNA profile if technology could someday grow sharp enough to read it. The detectives wrote it down and felt the cruel irony of time. The evidence might mature before justice did. Oki's mother was brought to a room in the precinct and shown a photograph of the shoe heel, the laundromat label, the folded English page. She looked at them with eyes that had been crying for months, and said nothing for a long time. Then she whispered, "She was here," as if saying it made it real, as if saying it could pull her daughter back through the wall. The press erupted when the existence of an underground holding site leaked, because nothing stays buried under Tokyo forever, not even tunnels. Headlines screamed about secret room under Shinjuku. Politicians demanded answers. The Transit Authority issued statements packed with formal regret and vague promises. Commuters looked at station maps differently, imagining doors that didn't exist on the public diagram, imagining rooms where fluorescent lights buzzed over a bolted chair. And in the middle of that noise, another woman disappeared, January 14, 1996. 21 years old. Last seen near Ikeburo, holding a clear umbrella even though the rain had stopped. Her transit card showed an entrance beep. No exit record. No body. No scream. Just a gap where a life should be, and a city that suddenly understood, in its bones, that the monster didn't need darkness to work. He needed movement, politeness, and a million people willing to look away for 1 second too long.